right, we'll move into new business item letter C, city manager annual review. Do we want the chair of ONG to take this, or?
Can I make a statement?
Yes, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one statement, and then I'll be available for questions as I participate. I just want to thank those who came out in support of this amendment and those who opposed it. As was mentioned earlier, this is one of the virtues or grassroots efforts of local government is transparency. You can see your representatives and you can most easily affect the city's decision. My job is to run, promote, and protect the city and BPU. Anyone is interested in talking about the details of those three things, I'd be happy to share with you. It's not an easy job and it's 24/7. I think many on council would say that I take texts from them at all hours of the day, weekends, vacations. I'm available to the city council and to the residents when situations come up. I take the job very seriously, and based on comments, most people, I believe that the city is heading in a good direction, which is great news for everyone here. That being said, I know council has received calls, letters, both for and against this item. I would just ask you to consider the unanimous recommendations of the VP Board and ONG Committee and give fair consideration to the actual facts I went through at the beginning of the meeting and not distorted ones published to social media. We can laugh off social media, but it has a major influence, particularly where these facts were posted. To answer a couple of the questions, it was talked about a 33% raise and a $750,000 severance. That's completely inaccurate and not correct. Untrue. Do I have a new job offer? No. I don't want to leave Hillsdale. And the question of why, I think, and this wasn't delineated from me, but it started with the BPU Personnel Committee, the board, and went to ONG, is security. Job security, knowing that having a 7-year contract currently, that it would recommend to go back to thereabouts the same amount, is great for me. Talking about the 2-year rolling contracts, I will tell you that you will not get a city manager to take 2-year rolling contracts. In this profession, city managers come and go. And the average is probably 3 years, whether they have a 3-year contract or a longer one. So the average is 3 years. I've been here for 9 going on 10. I would like to stay and continue it. I know I have 4 years left. I will continue to do my job through that term. Again, this is just more for security, getting me to a longer term that they felt was warranted given my performance as was echoed by many. So that's all I have to say here.
Thank you for your honesty, Dave. Will, would you like to?
City Attorney, is there anything in the charter that says that this is illegal to extend the contract?
There's nothing that prohibits or addresses what the term would be for an extension.
And what about the city ordinances?
Nothing within the city ordinances.
And is there anything in the state statutes?
There actually is a provision in the Home Rule Cities Act, which, if you give me a second here, which is section 3D, which says the qualifications, duties, and compensation of the city's officers this is mandatory provisions that are required in the city charter. And so that's one of them. You have to have the qualifications, duties, and compensation of the city's officers set out. If the city has an appointed chief administrative officer, city manager, the legislative body of the city may enter into an employment contract with the chief administrative officer extending beyond the terms of the members of the legislative body unless the employment contract is prohibited by the city charter. An employment contract with a chief administrative officer shall be in writing and shall specify the compensation to be paid to the chief administrative officer, any procedure for changing the compensation, any fringe benefits, and any other conditions of employment. The contract shall state that the chief administrative officer serves at the pleasure of the legislative body, and the contract may provide for severance pay or other benefits in the event the chief administrative officer's employment is terminated at the pleasure of the legislative body. So, since there is no provision in the charter that prohibits the extension of the contract for the term that's proposed, then that means under that section, it's okay.
Thank you. I can move this if, and with further comment, right? Yeah, so I move it.
You can,
Go ahead.
I'm moving it.
you're making a motion.
Motion. To accept it as written.
Yeah.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
And now we can have a discussion. Because
Okay.
can I say something?
You got your hand up.
I want to have the opportunity to vote on this, because I've known this man for 9 years. I've seen what he's done. You take that opportunity away from me to vote and let another council come in here to vote. That is not fair, because they've not worked with him long enough. And that's why I want the opportunity to vote. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. Any other comments? Councilman Deere?
I'm gonna have to say, the only thing I really don't like about this recommendation, because it's a bundle of stuff. Because if we're talking about city's manager performance for the last year, a 2% pay raise, I'm all in, no problem. But then and currently, if it was a three-piece deal, it'd make it a lot easier for me. Because at the same time, his current contract is good for 4 years, and as long as he maintains his performance, he'll probably get that 2% from his council. And David Mackie's done an incredible job. If you look at when he came in here, what was going on at the BPU, or, and just the terrible things going on down there. And the fact that with the Myers, getting the Myers into town. I mean, and they're working with different government agencies. But I'm gonna say, and of course, I'm kind of biased, but because I was more involved in this one, was the college. I can remember years ago, because my family's been here for 60 plus years. And I can remember past councils, past staff, saying, man, we need to get the college to purchase us a fire truck. Never happened. And, but now we're looking at a possibility that with this endowment, that the college going forward is going to be a very significant contributor to this community. And from that standpoint, I just really give Dave a lot of, high fives and everything else. And the fact he's able to work with all the different departments. And there's a lot of truth in the fact that when you ever call him, I have a tendency to text, that's kind of my story. But he always gets back with you. If he's busy, he'll let you know, hey, I'm in a meeting, I'll get back with you. He's very approachable. And that being said, as far as on the 2%, 100% in. But I do struggle with the other stuff. And I struggle with the extension going from the 4 years to 8, because he's doing a great job. And I'm not really concerned about the severance portion of it, because that only comes into play if future councils come in and say, well, you know what, we're going to take this city in a different direction. And all of a sudden our priorities of this council are not the priorities of the present council, or this, being we would be the past. But I understand where he's coming from too, as far as having some continuity. I mean, he has kids, he's, going to school, and he wants some, put down roots, and he's been here, like you said, for 9 years. On the severance portion, I think 12 months is sufficient. I mean, because if another council comes in and says, hey, we don't want your expertise anymore, and we're gonna go, like they said, look elsewhere, that gives him a year to figure out, where he's gonna land. And so that's my biggest struggle with this motion, is the fact it's a three-piece. And I really would have appreciated if we could piece it out. Because then it basically forces me maybe to make a vote that I might not otherwise want to make. And it's just, and I think there is a lot of credibility to say that other future councils should have a say in our city manager. And right now, the way the current contract is stated, now I'm just gonna be directed to Tom, but if we were to vote this down, his current contract would stay in place, and could we bring back another motion on his merit pay for the year?
Yes.
We voted on his merit pay last year, if I remember right.
No, I know,
The merit pay is an annual.
yeah, but being that it's part of this motion,
Right.
so if the motion were to fail,
Yes.
okay, and because that's, we make another motion right after it, to just take
To just address the merit pay.
yes.
Yes, because it would be a different motion over a different proposed amendment of the
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Wise words, as always. I share the same concerns that you do. And I understand what you're saying, Bruce, that you want to have your say in this, but I don't think that you would have appreciated it if you would have got elected to council and found out that you were beholden to all the decisions that the previous council made. Go ahead.
When they presented this, the ONG, the 18-month, 24 months, I was, oh, this is gonna be a hard one to get through. I hate to say this, nothing against you, Dave, but I'm kind of with Tony on that part of the thing. The 2% is absolute, but the 18 months and the 24, that makes me a little nervous, especially with the environment the way it is. But it's nothing against you, it's just dollars and cents on my part. And I just want to make sure I have the right to take the vote tonight, and that's what I want.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce. I think lots of comments were made about social media. Boy, if I had a dime for every time somebody lied about me on social media, I would be getting paid as much as you, Dave. But, guys, I think the fundamental issue that was brought into play here was the timing of this, that when you suggest an extension of this length, when there is at least 2 council members that have mostly 2 feet out the door, another 3 council members that aren't eligible for re-election, and then it's just a couple weeks before an election when we know that there's going to be new council members taking the podium. Boy, you sure can't blame the public for being like, hold on here a second, this seems suspect. Because I admit I had the same misgivings right at the beginning of this, that this seems like a very flagrant attempt to try to hamstring the next several councils. And I want to be clear, nobody up here is talking about changing the form of government. I like the strong mayor system better, but that's not the form of government we have in Hillsdale. We are chartered with this council manager form of government. Those are the confines that we're working in. I've worked with lots of different city managers. We are lucky to have Dave. I think he does a fabulous job, and I also think that he's extremely well compensated for the great job that he does. So I think we're very fair with what we pay Dave, and I think that he repays us in kind by doing an incredible job. But I just, when there's 3 years left on the contract, it just seems goofy to tweak everybody's nose and extend it past that point when there's an election in just a couple weeks. And when I know I'm on my way out of here I can tell you right now, I won't be running for another seat on city council, or obviously I wouldn't be eligible for mayor again for 4 years. I don't want to do this again. I've been up here since 2013, and it's a long time. And like Josh said, we don't get paid a lot to do this. It's really not a fun job. And I love the city of Hillsdale, but I feel like at this point, I've done my part. I've done my public service. And when I get ready to hand this gavel off to the next person, I don't want them beholden to all the decisions that I made. Because frankly, maybe some of them weren't great decisions. Not saying you weren't a great decision, Dave. I made the motion to hire you when we brought you on. So, you know, been up here through a lot of turnover of a lot of staff, and I hope that you stick around. I'm happy to hear that you're not looking for another job, because that was one of the first things that I thought too, is that you got a offer from somebody else. You know, there's mixed feelings about you doing BPU in this, but that's a decision that we made, and I think that you've done a fair job on it. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's too tough a sell for me to extend this to 6 years past when my time on council is gonna be over with. So, I voted for every one of your contracts in the past, happy to vote for whatever you need, but not something that's gonna well live past my tenure on council.
I just have a comment in that there's two issues that I'm concerned about. I think Dave does a great job, so it's not a discussion about how well he's performing. But by extending it to this 4 years, to 2032, the new council members that will be elected won't be able to have a say in a sense of observing how he's doing or anything else like that. So as some of the people that were discussing earlier said, well, why don't we just delay this until after the election? And I would feel a lot more comfortable by waiting until after the two councilmen, the new council members come in. I don't know how many there'll be, but the new council members come in. And then the other thing is, I do have a problem with the amount of the severance pay. And I forget who was saying that 1 year seems to be more reasonable to me than the amount of severance pay, and I know we're already beyond that, but I would be much more comfortable with a 1 year severance pay, giving him, if something were to happen, a year to find new employment. So that, my concern is, can we just wait until after the election and the two new council members, or four new I don't know how many new council members we have. Could we have four?
We'll have two for sure, we could have four.
Could have four new council members. Let them at least have an opportunity to have a say in what the contract's gonna look like, so.
The contract's there. The contract's right there, and it's there, it's in place, it's gonna be in place for the next, 3 years?
Right.
4 years?
If
Yeah,
we
4
were
years.
gonna have a new if we were gonna have a new contract, let's wait and let the new members be there to have their say in what the contract's gonna be.
And I appreciate you being honest, Dave, and saying, it's about security, I want security, because who could blame you in that aspect? And the job is it's a public service job, so you're working oftentimes at the whims of the public, and I understand new people come in with new ideas, new people come in with different prejudices, and I'll tell you, when I ran for council the first time, it's because I was angry about something. It was. And I think a lot of people get on council for that reason. But, you gotta respect the people, and you gotta, Councilman Stuchel?
Yeah, we're really in a transition period right now, and I think what we see here is a crossroads of, we have very intelligent citizens in our community, very intelligent people who pay attention, which is excellent. We also have a number of hardworking business people who have been very successful and want to continue to see that success continue on. And they've seen failed city managers and they've seen successful ones. So in a sense, they're looking to protect that, while, great new ideas, new generations, the transition isn't gonna be like that. It's gotta be a gradual transition, and David Mackie could very much be that bridge for that transition. And I would hate to see us lose David in 3 years from now, because somebody else's children are old enough now, and maybe he's not so tied to the community. But David could be that transition, that bridge to, if we wanna have a citizen-run, a mayor-run government. But right now, we're not there. And you're not just gonna get there by denying his contract, or getting up here and making all sorts of, nice speeches. This is gonna happen over bourbon and cigars. This is gonna happen over a lot of discussions and a lot of good people getting involved. But David's leadership, servant leadership, he serves. He's definitely not a dictator by any means. I mean, his accomplishments are commendable. And I think we need to really look at this bridge between where we're at today and where the future is gonna take us. And you gotta have a bridge to make that a successful, well-built bridge. And I see that in David Mackie. Thank you.
Councilman Weir.
One more comment, this kind of directed at Gary's comments. I think it's important that this council votes on this tonight, and then, because I'm gonna make a motion on the first part of it, because this full council, for the last 2 years, if it doesn't pass it is, for the last 2 years have witnessed David's hard work. And if we wait for the new council to come in, minimum, or maximum, you could have 4 new members. I have no idea what David's done where he's taken us from and where we're at now. So I really think that we need to go, if we have a motion in a second, depending on how that goes, but I would definitely be making a motion, if it doesn't pass, to address that first part of that contract, because on this council, we know his performance, whereas the future council that's gonna be coming in the middle of November might not be up to snuff on it.
Councilman Zola.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen, for your comments thus far. I would say lady, but you haven't commented yet. Nevertheless, I appreciate Dave Mackie. He has answered my texts in the middle of a weekend, in the middle of a night. There's a branch, if you drive south on South Hillsdale Road, there's a branch hanging on the charter communications line that's been hanging on there for months. I'm just waiting for that silly thing to finally, for the line to succumb to its weight. I called Dave on that. He's like, that's not a BPU line, that's a charter communications line. He called charter, they've yet to act on it. So maybe some of you who are charter customers might get on the phone and call them and say, listen, if you guys don't do this, we're gonna lose our communications in the city of Hillsdale. But nevertheless, Dave did work on that, and he has answered my calls in the middle of the night and when he's on vacation, and I admire him for that, and I do think he serves our city well. Nevertheless, having a contract extension in the middle of a contract is, I don't know what the right word to describe it. It's suspect. It has an appearance that many of our constituents don't appreciate. The severance, man, I wish I had a severance package at my job for even 6 weeks. I don't. I work at will. My employer employs me at will. If either of us decide to depart ways, then we depart ways, and I have to figure it out. If my employer says your services are no longer required, Robert, I think it's a very unique for a not-for-profit like the city of Hillsdale to offer such a bountiful package. And I voted for when I was first on council in 2021, I believe, is when we voted for it. And maybe a little ignorant to the ramifications of that. And I understand, speaking to other city manager friends of mine, why there is this contingency of a severance if a city manager gets fired. And that, and to clarify again, it's not, if there's due cause, you know, if he's embezzled and we fire him because he embezzled money, and I'm not saying you ever would do that, it's just an example. I believe Dave's a man of integrity, want to clarify that. But, you know, that's due cause, and he would not receive a severance for that, right? So, there is that 2 years, you know, and you know, having your salary in the public forum, you know, and so everybody knows all your business, it's pretty intimate details, and I admire a man that can take the scrutiny of that. But you know, upwards of $400,000 or whatever that, you know, to the taxpayers of the city of Hillsdale, when we're assessing the taxpayers of the city of Hillsdale above and beyond their taxable rates, and when taxable rates have gone up considerably, I'm paying $1,200 more a year than I was 3 years ago for my own home. So, which is fine. I think it's part of my duty to contribute to the city's functionings. I actually moved to the city purposefully because I wanted to get on council, because I wanted to help, not because I was mad about anything. I wanted to be involved in, like the mayor said, to my civic duty. You know, Dave does it at our request, but I can't support 24 months. I have a hard time with 12 months based on what I know. And I was sent an email, a video of a debate with former Councilman Bell when we were arguing about 4 or 6 months, you know, many years ago. And so that's very, I can't support that, Dave, and I'm sorry. And then also, I believe in your current contract, there's a cost of living increase, which is based on the rate of inflation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I didn't receive a 7 or 9% salary boost this year. I mean, you are, and I'm glad you are. You know, the cost of living is crazy. But then I think in this is another 2% on top of that, which I admire and respect Councilman Beer and appreciate his sentiment to include that. But again, back to the austerity thing, we're asking our constituents to contribute $5,000 above and beyond their property tax values when we are repaving their roads, which is a necessary thing, and that's why I vote for it every time, because our infrastructure has been neglected, you know, since the 50s probably. I know Councilman Beer lived on South Hillsdale Road in the 70s and told us that the culverts there that we just repaved last year were flooding 50 years ago, and we finally fixed that, and I'm glad for that. But I would request, you know, that, you know, as a sign of goodwill and good faith to the constituents you serve, that maybe this year we just say, you know what, I don't need the 24 months. I don't need the 2%. Just as Councilman Morrissey and I dug deep in our pockets to kind of feel the pain of our constituents, maybe Dave, you could do that as well. And not saying you have to. It's just something that I'm thinking out loud here, because I want to see our roads continue to get repaved, and I want to see our citizens continue to be heard. But unfortunately, I can't support this.
Any more discussion? Councilor Palladino.
So the severance package would raise to 2 years in 2025, correct?
That's what's in
Was the recommendation? What would be the approximate payout for that severance?
About 400,000 or more.
Yeah.
If I was fired with cause, without cause.
If you're fired without cause, right? Yeah, so, I would like to hear something about what caused this, like.
I do have a quick question about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we had terminated a BPU director with cause, and we still paid his salary for 2 years afterwards. Was that because it was in his contract, or? to say anybody's name, and I'm not trying to drag somebody through the mud that's already got drugged through the mud enough, but I'm just saying that I do recall that we had to pay his salary for 2 years, even though we terminated him with an extreme amount of cause. Councilman Sharp.
But remember, he had it written in his contract through the former city manager, Mackie. Yeah, it wasn't you, Dave. This is back when Tim Bobby was there.
Before I came.
Yes, and that's why the people rose up and spoke and wanted him removed after 9.5 years, because they had enough, and then there was a mess. Dave had to come in and clean up.
Yeah,
So-
Dave,
so-
yeah.
Also, the BTU director back then in particular would have been separate from the city manager, so the BTU director's salary and terms and all that aren't constrained by a charter or any statutes that relate to the types of things that we're talking about here. That section I just read indicated the severance, for example, that you're allowed to provide in a contract for the chief executive officer or the chief administrative officer of severance pay if they are terminated without cause. Cause is an interesting thing, so it's a legal term of art, and it sort of is like the courts anyway, that are asked to interpret it, sort of like the old rule for obscenity, we know it when we see it, right? So it kind of depends on the factual situation that you're presented with at the time, and you have to get a legal opinion as to whether or not that would constitute cause. Generally, when we do that, we look at, are there cases that have been litigated up to the appellate court level that would give us some guidance as to whether this particular factual pattern and the reason for the termination would fit within that. So that's where you can wind up with a fight sometimes, is if it's not real clear. There are certain things that certainly are theft, embezzlement, that sort of thing, gross insubordination. If in the case of the city manager, if they did something that was, they were told by the council to do X thing, and they did something to subvert that, that would probably pretty clearly be cause. But again, it's dependent on the factual situation and the response.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Councilman Valley.
Okay, so, yeah, my main concern with that, just doing a very brief reading, is that it essentially does not apply to our disagreement with administrative actions. Does the city manager have the authority to sue the Pongrasses without the council's consent?
So the city manager has the ability to ask the attorney's office to file an action to enforce a right of the city, yes. So in that case, that's what that lawsuit is for. We filed an action at the request of the city manager to enforce the city's rights with respect to the alleyway, the public's rights with respect to the alleyway. So yeah, in that circumstance, yes, the city manager could do that. If the council didn't like that, the council could vote to instruct the city attorney's office to, handle either the dismissal of the suit or some sort of other resolution if they wanted to.
Okay, so we can block and admit it, well, that's a political action, a lawsuit, we can override that.
Well, so the city attorney's office, we represent the city, right? And so if the city council, which is the legislative authority of the city, directed our office to take a particular action upon a vote of the entire council, sure. Or whoever happened to be there at that particular meeting, assuming you had a quorum, right? Yeah, then we would do whatever we're asked to do. That's our job. We provide that legal service to the city, and we follow whatever guidance we're given by those folks who provide that to us.
Okay, but you don't have to seek prior approval.
Generally, I couldn't sue somebody if a committee of the council came to us and said we wanted to do that.
So it's council members can't initiate a lawsuit as a committee, but a staff member can.
Only the city manager has the authority to direct us to do something.
Okay.
because he is the chief administrative officer of the city.
Okay, but a lawsuit is not an administrative action, is the point. A lawsuit isn't necessarily political, it's a judicial action. So the point I'm trying to get at here is that we don't have full oversight. We can correct every action as it comes along, but if there were a pattern of actions that we disagreed with, you don't want to have to correct those piecemeal. You want to be able to have control over the person in that office. Okay, so that's why we need political control.
Just to address that context of the question that you asked me in terms of authority.
Sure.
There is nothing to stop the city council from providing
Yes.
meeting to say here are here are procedures that we want to adopt for the determination as to whether or not we would file an action against the citizen or anybody else. Right? So you could do that in advance as opposed to waiting until after something happened and say, oh, wait a minute, we didn't want that to happen, right? It's just that right now there isn't anything that says something like that. So our job is to do what we're asked by those with authority to ask us to do it, and so that's what we do.
Okay. Yeah, it's those sorts of provisions. I know that the rest of the council is grumbling because they don't mind this, but I do. I'd also like to read the city manager appointment section. The council shall, within 90 days after any vacancy exists in the position of city manager, appoint a city manager for a period of not less than 1 year, nor more than 5 years, and shall fix his compensation. So the common sense reading of this is that city manager contracts extend from 1 to 5 years. The legal reading of this is that this is only if the position isn't currently filled. If it is currently filled, then you can have what number of years for the contract?
There isn't a set number of years because your charter doesn't address that, nor does it in that language I read from the Home Rule City Act says you can have the contract length or the terms, well actually it addresses the length, right? It says you can have a term that is beyond the date of the term of those in office on the council at the time, as long as there's not a charter provision that prohibits it. And so there isn't something, it doesn't expressly say that if you extend the contract for somebody that's already there, that there's a set amount of time for which you could extend it. And, there was a new contract that was given after the initial contract to Mr. Mackie, and that's what set up this longer period of time. And I think, I didn't give that original opinion, but I think at that time, that was the opinion that came from.
Okay, so we have no limit to the appointment length according to this reading. So you could appoint a city manager for 1 year, take that vote, 2 seconds later, take another vote, give them a 20-year contract, 5-year severance, no statutory limitations.
Yeah, I don't know that I would opine on that without looking to see if there's anything that addresses that law. But I think that certainly at the time that you entered into another contract for another period with the existing city manager, that you could theoretically, because it doesn't say you're prohibited from exceeding that for someone that's existing in the post, that you could have a term that was in excess of 7 years. In which case you could continue to extend it to maintain that same term, presumably, or something different.
So 7 years is the limit then?
No,
Okay.
there is no limit.
Right. Okay.
I'm making the distinction between the two things that you talked about, which is if I did the initial agreement and said it was for a term of a year, the next meeting or the next day turned around and extended it, I think that might be a closer call, and I wouldn't want to give you an opinion on whether or not that was okay unless I went and did some research on it.
Okay. I don't know if the rest of you can hear this. They absolutely hate this grumbling constantly. No deliberation, no team building. Okay, yeah, this sets a really dangerous principle, I think. So in 2030, none of us will be up here, I believe. That then council elected in 2030 still will not have the ability to change the city manager without paying a $400,000 plus severance, including all of the raises that he'll have over the next years. Could be $450,000 by then. that means that no responsible council would fire him except for, you know, actually stealing money from the city, basically, because it would be such a burden on the city budget. That would be currently, you know, a sixth of the city budget to fire the city manager, a fifth. You know, what are we at, 2.2 million in tax revenue this year. Okay, so this is not a good precedent. What I feel from this whole situation is that Dave doesn't trust us or the next elected council to keep him here. And I guess I'm confused why that's the case. Do any of you have bad interactions with Dave? You're all saying he's responsive. I don't get why this is the case. I think in principle, each city manager contract should extend for 2 years so that each new council has the authority to reapprove it or not. I don't even agree with the 1-year severance. I think that $200,000 ties the hands of council. You could make an argument that in principle it could be 4 years, because then each council person would at least have one opportunity to vote on the city manager. Okay, that could make sense. I think we're heading into, you know, setting a dangerous precedent here of contracts that extend beyond the length of not only this council. Everyone will be gone. Gary and I are not eligible after 2030. We will be gone. There will be no one here who approved this contract, and it will be set in stone at a cost of $450,000 to remove. One other point, I also don't support the cost of living adjustment or the pay raise, not because of Dave's merit, but because taxation is at 21 mils, which is the statutory maximum, and we're charging $5,000 special assessments for road repair. So, as an act of servant leadership, as an act of you know, public service, I think it should be frozen until we reach a point where we can afford these things.
Any more discussion? I've got a motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, second by Councilman Sharp. We are voting on the amendment to Dave's, we're not voting on the annual, we're voting on the amendment to his current contract to extend it to 8 years, including the severance, so on and so forth. You guys know what we're voting on. We'll do a roll call, City Clerk.
Councilperson Sharp?
Yes.
Soha?
No.
Stuchel?
No.
Beer?
No.
Wolfram?
No.
Mayor Stockford?
No.
Councilperson Morrissey?
Yes.
Palomino?
No.
And Pratt? No. That's 2, 7, 6.
Councilman Beer.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve a 2% salary increase for Mackie starting November 1st, 2024.
I'll second that.
Got a motion on the floor from Councilman, and this is on top of the COLA, or this is in?
I take it you mean the merit pay increases provided for in Mr. Mackey's current contract?
That is correct.
Is this appropriate at this time to be voting on this? Is this when we would normally be voting on this?
End of the year.
You have a motion. If you entertain the motion and you have a second, then you could vote on it.
Okay, okay. Motion on the floor. Wait, any discussion regarding this? Councilman Zola.
Yeah, just, excuse me, I ran out of water. Just to clarify, there's a cost of living allowance, and then the 2% is on top of that, correct? But the cost of living allowance is already in the contract.
That's in his
As a
contract,
written.
he gets that.
Right. And we are amending it simply.
So this isn't an
Not amending
amendment.
it.
Oh.
This is in his existing contract,
Where-
as it was amended. There's an automatic cost of living increase, and there is also a discretionary annual 2%
Up to
merit
2%.
increase. Right, so that's why I asked for the clarification, to make sure that's what Mr. Beer is talking about.
Councilman
And
Beer.
I believe the COLA is 3.5.
I don't know what it is this year.
3.2.
3.2.
last year, is that correct?
Cost of living was 8.7 last year.
Oh, so 10.7. Yeah, same reason, no, do any, previous question, do any city employees have severance pay? I don't,
Other city employees are, straight employees and they do not have severance. I am a contract employee, terminated at will, so I have a severance program.
okay, yeah, 3.2 is sufficient, most other Americans probably are, in the same boat.
What would
Councilman-
the 2% be? How much would that be, 2%?
I don't know exactly what it would be.
It'd be about $4,000 a year. If $200,000 is the baseline of what Mr. Mackie earns, that is.
Councilman Beer.
Now, because the BPU pays a portion, as does the city, correct? Okay, and it's, the city pays 45, BPU pays 55?
The city pays 40% of my wages and the VP pays 60.
Any more discussion?
That would be $800 a year to the city's budget.
Councilman Pelley.
I will say though, since this came up, this distinction again between general fund and BPU, yes, it does save the city money. You're paying it as ratepayers though through the BPU.
Councilman Beer.
Which the BPU's rates that charge our customers in Hillsville, BPU rates are much lower than consumers. And they don't do prime time rate increases if you turn the AC on in the middle of a hot afternoon.
Any more discussion? We got a motion on the floor from Councilman Veer to do the 2% merit-based bonus. Did I have a second? Got a second from Councilman Sharp. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk?
Councilmember Soha? Stuchel?
Yes.
Beer?
Yes.
Wolfram?
Yes.
Mayor Stockford?
No.
Councilperson Morrissey?
Yes.
Palladino?
No.
Pratt?
No.
Sharp?
Yes.
That's 5-4 approved.
Okay. Congratulations.